Murray SawChuck, my friend. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, man?
I am so excited to talk to you because you and I have been friends for a couple years now, and we've done many TV segments together, and you did my car show before. But when it comes to TV segments and doing interviews, they've always been short. So I'm excited to sit here for the next hour and talk to you about your life and everything you have going on, buddy.
So am I, man. So am I. How you been? Good?
Good. Hey, how would
Good.
you describe yourself? Because I think of you as a magician. I think of you as a comedian. I think of you just as a straight up entertainer. How do you describe yourself to people?
I always wanted to be an entertainer, never a magician or a host or a comedian. I've always wanted to have that kind of like, when you talk about somebody like a Johnny Carson, or Phyllis Diller or Rip Taylor, if you go way back, they're entertainers. You just know them who they are because of who they are. And so it's one of those things where I kind of always wanted to be that person. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into always only a magician, only comedian, only whatever. So I think, I always tell people I'm like the Dennis the Menace of comedy and magic because it's very haphazard.
You do it all. You do it all. All right, here's where I want to start. I want to go back to, we talked about it before, but AGT, and that train, you made that train disappear. How nervous were you going into that performance that night?
It was wild, because that was my last bit on America's Got Talent. That was my fourth episode. I'd been on all year in 2005. So that was season. When was it? That was 2010, season 5, and there was like 22.5 million people watching live, which is unbelievable. Because now it's down to 8 or 7 or 6, which is still great. But 22 million, that's a lot of people, and that's before a lot of these other reality shows were on. And so when I pitched the idea. Because I did this other trick before that where I turned a girl into a tiger. And
Which
then I
was
had a tiger.
mind-blowing, by the way.
Yeah, which is wild, right?
Yeah, because if you have to YouTube this. You not only turned this girl into a tiger, within seconds, she is standing behind Howie Mandel. She's on stage. All of a sudden, she's the other side of the room.
Yeah. And that was hard to do, because I had a lot of things moving at that moment. I had a tiger to deal with, which is 450 pounds. And, they run the show. You know what I mean? Like, if they're not happy or they don't want to move or go to the position they need to be in to make you look magical, it's not going to happen. Plus, don't forget, we needed to clear everything through PETA, you know what I mean? And all there, because it was CBS lot, we shot down in Hollywood, and everything had to be done right. We had an air conditioner in the box for the tiger. It came in a massive NASCAR trailer with hay, eating steaks. I mean, it's way better than 1% of the richest people in the world that we know now. But that's PETA, and they take care of their animals. But that was a big thing as well, let alone the trick. And then we did the trick, and, when you actually see it live, or at least on YouTube now, when I turn around and look at that box and that curtain drops and the girl's not there anymore and the tiger's there, because I think my line I said, it was very cocky, very confident. I said, keep your eye on the girl, but this trick you'll be talking about tomorrow morning at work or something.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I thought, man, I hope the hell it works. But either way, if it didn't work, you'd still be talking about it. And when I pulled the cloth to drop, because we had a hell of a time for I'd say about 3 hours the night before, we could not get the cloth to drop down quickly. It got jammed every time. So the trick worked, but the cloth wouldn't drop. And you can't reach the cloth because it's about a story high. So if it's stuck, the trick's over. Like you can't see it.
Yeah.
And so I was scared. So if you see me on that video, I actually jump up and I crank on the cord because I want to make sure both sides drop equally.
Yeah.
And when I looked, the girl was there. I was like, and the girl was behind, of course, the judge, and the tiger was there. And I was so happy, going, thank God that's done with. I'm never doing that again. And then when we did the train trick, they said, what can you do to top the tiger trick? And I said, man, I don't know. And I was sitting at the Ivy with my mom and Lefty, my guest actor and dear friend, in LA. And I know it's still a hot spot now, but back then, everyone famous was eating there. So I wanted to go there and have like a $42 salad just because. So we're sitting, that's all I could afford, and a glass of water. And we're sitting there, and they call and say, hey, Murr, if you happen to get through this next round, we're not saying you are, but if you happen to, what would you do as a semifinalist? And I thought, oh, man. And I realized I didn't have any rags to riches story. I was raised by hardworking parents, they weren't really poor, weren't rich, but, and I worked for the railway, and that was it. I didn't, I wasn't abandoned or a foster child or anything like that. I didn't really, I had a very good life. So I thought, how do I make my life sound a bit more tragic, And so Lefty said, well, look, man, you're the only person that's done entertainment in your whole family. Everyone worked for the logging service or a post office service on your mom's side, or a legal secretary, and on your dad's side was all railway. There are real jobs. You know, you work 35 years, get a silver watch or a gold watch, retire. That's the end of it. And so why do you say you were the black sheep of the family? Because you chose magic and you weren't going to back down, because that's true. You really, you know, because I could have worked on the railway easily at 18 and made money, and that's it. So that was my angle. So I pitched that to them, and they said, "That's great. Can you do it?" I said, "Oh yeah." No idea how to do the trick in my life. I just had the idea, and they said, "Okay, well, great. So just so you know, you're going to have to probably do it in 1 week when semifinals start, or 2 weeks, depending which episode we put you on." I was like, "Whoa!" I said, "Next week we're not doing this, because I'm thinking I don't know how to do the damn trick. I don't know what. It's a nice idea, but where am I going to find a train? Is the train going to fit in the building, or is the weight of it going to be like light enough for the stage we're doing it on? I mean, all these things. And can I really do it?" And so I said, "You got to push it to the second week, or I can't do the trick." And they said, "Well, we're going to have to see about that. We're not sure we can guarantee that." I said, "Well, then you know what? I'm out." I said, "I'm okay with it." I said, "I did a great trick with the tiger. That's fine. But just so you know, if you want me to do this trick, it's got to be the second week." So I needed 2 weeks to figure this thing out, at least, not a week. Anyways, long story longer, we air that night. I get pushed through to the finals. They call me, go, "Great, just so you know, we're putting you on the second week of the semifinals." And I said, "Now go figure out how to make this train appear or disappear." I said, "Great." And then I spent literally 7 days back here in Vegas, not sleeping for 7 days, trying to figure out how to get a train back in LA that would work for this trick. So that's how
it's a brilliant idea. And I love your motto is you say yes and figure it out afterwards, no matter what it is. Just say yes. And I always tell interns or anyone starting out in TV, like anybody, just say yes to everything. They call you, can you come in and do that? Yes. Say yes. Always say yes. And so you say yes to this trick. I can do this trick. Where does one find a locomotive? They get it to LA.
You're going to love this. So as you know Vegas pretty well, obviously. So I remember going out to Lake Mead a lot. And on the way from Vegas to Lake Mead, which is about a 45-minute drive for those who don't know, you go through a small little town called Boulder City. This is the city where a lot of the workers lived and worked who built the Hoover Dam, which is way back in the day. And it drops down into the lake area, which is our water reservoir for Vegas and California. Well, there's a ton of trains on the way. When you're pulling into Boulder City, there's like a train storage yard there with locomotives and rail cars and cabooses, which I saw. And I thought, you know what? I wonder who owns that. Like, I know there's trains there. So my mom was in town, and my dad at the time, but my mom was in town to see me on the show and said, "Mom, let's get up early and grab a coffee. I want to drive to Boulder City and find a train." I said, "I got to figure out how to get a train to LA and how to do this." So I drive down there. I see all the trains there. And to this day, if you drive in, you'll see them on the left side of the main road going into Boulder City. I went, "Oh my God, there's a locomotive from like the 1918, 1920s. So I loop around to figure out the nearest road to it. They got barbed wire fence over the edge of it. There's a big trucking company beside it. But this thing's enclosed, but no office, no way to get into it. So I go to the guys next door on a trucking company, and I say, "Hey, I'm a magician in town." And I said, "How do you get into the train area there?" I said, "Because those trains look..." "Oh, so that's actually a state-owned park kind of area. Not park publicly, but that's where the state keeps their old locomotives. You know, if you want to go see them," I said, "we have those railway ties stacked against the fence, and they ironically go right to the top of the fence. So if you want to get to the other side of the fence, you know, it's our property. I see nothing. Well, just climb the railway ties, hop over, and go have a look. No one's over there." I'm like, "But you didn't hear it from me. If somebody comes, you might want to run back over the fence." Great. So sure enough, so Mom stays in the car. I hop over the fence and run around, and they got all these trains over there, tons of trains, cabooses, and all. I said, "This is great." So I found a train I liked. I said, "This is the train that looks identical to my father's train," because I'm trying to match the one he grew up on. And I got my builder over there, and I said to him, "How do we get this train?" He said, "Murray, doesn't matter if you call him or not. We can't. The train's 47,000 pounds. Like, it's way too heavy."
Yeah, I can get to LA.
Exactly, and the stage is only going to hold 2,500 pounds or 3,000. I said, "Even if we got a real train and really gutted most of it, the wheel alone." And I said, "I know." So he took all the measurements, came back to Vegas, and rebuilt the train. Yeah, and the reason why I didn't call a state to say, "Can I use that train?" because there's just no way to make it light enough to put it on the real stage in LA because it was a proper stage. It would just blow right through the stage. So I couldn't even use that train. So like I know Copperfield used a train years ago in the 80s, but he kept that train on the tracks. It was the Orient Express. Totally different way I did it than him. I know there's a lot of controversy about me doing it and him doing it before me, of course, but it's not the same thing. And I said, well, I want to do this inside live, for AGT. So my buddy literally built that train in 4.5 days with like 12 people and rebuilt the whole thing, and he just made under the weight level of that stage that would actually hold a train. And we brought it in. It was real size, real everything. And then I spent the next 2 days. Here's a funny story. So he's got the thing ready. I'm like, dude, I mean, I'm doing the show in about 4 days. I need this train here 2 days before to make sure we can figure this thing out. I got a sheet being made, like it's being sewn, because you can't buy a sheet this big to cover a train.
The curtain that you dropped.
Oh my God, yeah. So we're getting this material. We got a frame built. He gets in, so he finally gets this train in the back of a flatbed truck, right, and a trailer. So it's the truck and the trailer, because it's a long train. Got the smokestack, cow catcher, right. He's driving all the way from Vegas to LA, which for people that live here know, but it's about 4.5 hours. Great. So he's really careful. The thing's strapped down. Got this sucker built. Brought his welder with him because he had to put a few extra pieces on. He's coming off the 101 into LA and pulls off in Wilshire or Sunset or one of those streets he has to pull off to go down to CBS Studios, which is where they shoot Price is Right and Dancing with Stars and all these shows in Hollywood. He's coming down, and we're excited. I can see him. It's nighttime. It's like 7 o'clock at night. We're all excited this train's going to be here, and I can see it from a distance. It's about 4 blocks away. And as he's coming, he literally, I see an overpass, and I'm looking, man, I said, I hope he's in that middle lane, because I don't know if he's going to make that overpass with the smokestack, because it's a train on top of this, flatbed truck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, he cleared it. I'm like, that's unbelievable. Well, he cleared the overpass, but as he shifted to the left lane, the overhead light was lower than the bridge, the overpass. And as soon as he came by, he nailed a street lamp with the top of the smokestack. The smokestack canked over 90 degrees. Sparks went everywhere because it's metal. I'm like, oh my God, he's literally 1.5 blocks away, and he knocks the smokestack off. So he comes into the lot with this smokestack on his side. I'm like, and so we pull in. We laughed, of course. And he's like, I can't believe I made it all the way here. And that last 1.5 blocks, I smacked into a lamppost, which that's
when they got you.
The whole damn street. The whole street was pitch black. But we refixed it.
Don't stop. Just keep going. Don't stop either. Just keep going. Keep going.
Exactly, right? So anyways, we get into the studio, and we just got the hell out, and we got the train off, of course, and I spent the next 2 days trying to figure out really how to get this thing off that stage, on the stage, and vanish within the time we needed to. And then we did. We pulled it up. But once again, if you watch me on that video, when I pull that cloth and I look behind me to see the train gone, I am just as excited as the audience, because I'm telling you, I wasn't quite sure when I thought we might have half a train back there still. So.
Oh, you did it, man. It's just, if people haven't seen it yet, jump on YouTube. It's out there. And it's wild to see you do it and to see your reaction. And also, I know your relationship with your father. And that was a special moment for you guys to see. Cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the beginning for you. And maybe this is when you did get the magic bug. But when you were a kid, you got a Siegfried and Roy magic kit. Is that when you got the magic bug, or that was just a form of entertainment for you back as a kid?
Yeah, I got a, you're going to love this, that you brought this up. I'm going to get up for 2 seconds. But I found the thing. I got to show you. Hang on. I know we're on a Zoom, but I found
no, you're fine. I love all the paintings in the background of Murray.
20 years of my life.
Shut it back there.
And I found this. And this is the exact one that I got given to me. Siegfried and Roy magic kit with 5 or 6 tricks. That's them when they were a lot younger, obviously.
Yeah.
I've been looking for this sucker for 20 years, because I got this when I was probably 9 years old. All right, my mom and dad got this from, I'm trying to look at a date in the back of this, but I can't. It's when they're at the Frontier Hotel. Isn't that wild? That was my first hotel.
Yo, yes, look at that, yeah.
And so, there's these collectors now with these things, and so I when you get a thing like this as a 7-year-old, it lasts for 20 minutes, you throw in the garbage. You never think this is going to be your legacy, your life, when you talk to the microphone for the first time, would that be cool to have that first microphone whenever you were a kid trying to be a host or an actor, whatever you're doing, that's pretty cool. But most people do that stuff and they're just not who they thought they would become when they're 7. And so the last 10 or 15 years, I've been searching for this, going, man, I wish I have that now because it's my career. Like that's pretty monumental. So
Yeah.
20 years go by of looking for this thing, and this is not the original because I tossed the original, but this is the exact kit I got, and my mom and dad bought that in Reno, because Reno back in the 80s, as you may know, was actually more popular than Vegas. Like that's where a lot of the Canadians went down for the champagne flights. They'd get brought down for like $100 for 3 days, stay at a casino, steak for free, and Reno was a poppin' city until obviously Indian casinos came around and Vegas became Vegas for what it is now. But they got that as a souvenir just on the way out at a gift shop. Didn't even think anything of it. And that was one of my first tricks and one of my first kits I ever started. Isn't that crazy?
What's even crazier too is the fact that they were at the Frontier at the time.
Yes.
And that was like your first permanent gig here in Vegas was at the Frontier.
Isn't that wild?
My mind is blown with that. That is like a universe thing, like coming together. It's so crazy.
Isn't that wild? So that I started with that like any kid does, and then I put it away, and I professionally danced, I played music, and I got another magic kit, a Houdini magic kit when I was turning 12 to 13. So my birthday's in November, a month before Christmas, so my aunt and uncle always asked me what I want, and I never knew what I wanted. I wasn't one of those kids that really needed much, and so we had catalogs before the internet. Sears would have a catalog and all that stuff, and that's how you kind of saw what was new that year, kind of like what the internet does now. And I would go through the catalog, looking at stuff I thought would be kind of cool, because I didn't know what I wanted. And there was a car and a boat, of course, which I never got. And then they had the magic kits, and I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. I remember having one a few years ago. And then, when you're 12 to 13, you're more impressionable, and you maybe think what you might want to be or do when you grow up. And so my aunt and uncle got me that kit, and that was the one that kind of did it. And I'm still doing it. So
yeah, you're a master of your craft. You really are too. Just the tricks are amazing. When did you jump from you're practicing magic, you're doing gigs as a kid, building a little bit of craft? When do you make the leap into doing cruise ships and that part of your life? When is that?
From 13 to like 19, 20, I wanted to be a firefighter and
Well, you did.
or a chiropractor or a marine biologist. Those are my three things I really wanted. So I volunteer over at the aquarium in Vancouver, BC, where I'm from, Canada. And then I also was a lifeguard as at the age of 14. So my next thing from that would be a paramedic, and then of course be a fireman. And so I'd already on that line to doing that. And then chiropractor was one of those things where I thought, well, I'd have to go to school for a lot longer, and I really got to make sure I really want to do that. But at the same time, magic was doing so well as a teenager. I was doing 3 to 6 shows a weekend. And there are birthday party shows because that's a lot of work in a big city for you. But it was consistent. I had a Yellow Pages ad, because once again the internet wasn't around then, nor Instagram or TikTok. So that's how you advertised. And then I realized I kept getting more bookings when I was booked. So I'd call my magician friends going, hey, I got a job for you. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why am I giving the job away? I said, I'll book you. I'll take 10%. And so I started my own company, booking acts, which I still do now. But I thought, well, if I can't do the gig, at least I'm getting a piece of it. So I did that as a teenager. I had a little office line in my bedroom because to have a Yellow Pages ad, you can't use a regular phone. You got to have a business line. So I had a business line wired to my bedroom downstairs at home, my parents' home. And so at 16, 17, I was doing this. But then I thought, well, how do I get to LA? How do I get on TV? And TV, don't forget, there were still only 13 channels on TV back in those days. And I thought, well, how do I get on Knight Rider? How do I get on Dukes of Hazzards? Because those are the shows I grew up on. And so I thought, well, I need something bigger and better. And I realized the next thing was probably cruise ships because they paid well, got to see the world, and you got to work a lot. You got to work every week or more. And I thought, well, there's people doing cruise ships. And my parents took me on one when I was like 16. And they said, bring your act with you. Bring your 15 minutes. They usually have a talent show. And maybe, get an idea. I said, okay, so they surprised the cruise. And I remember the act that was on board was Dick Van Dyke's brother, Jerry Van Dyke. Remember he was in the coach?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, and he was on the show, a TV show at that time, and he was a comedian too. And he was booked on the ship. And I thought, holy crow, that's Coach from the TV. I mean, he's the guy, there was two guys. One bigger star, the tall guy, I can't think of his name, and then Jerry was the co-star of that.
The bumbling assistant, which was so endearing of an assistant coach. Yeah, and Dauber was like the other. I remember the show, watched it as a kid. Yeah,
and very funny, right? And so I thought, and he was on the ship. I thought, holy smokes, real stars do cruise ship. That's pretty cool. And so I had my little act. And I did it the cruise ship show or whatever, the talent show, and one of the cruise directors, I know it was on the Royal Sun Viking. It was like a 500 to 600 passenger ship for Royal Caribbean. And they thought, you have really good potential of doing this. You've been doing it a long time. I said, well, thanks. And I said, what do you need to do on a cruise ship? He said, well, you need, because I only did 10 minutes. They said, well, you got to do usually 2 different 45-minute shows. I'm like, pardon me? How many? I just did 10 minutes. I thought I killed. I got to do 2 45-minute shows that are different. So I thought, okay, I got to go home and figure out more material. And then I finally pitched myself. And at age 20 years old, I got offered my first cruise ship from my first agent, John Whitefoot, which is a big agent in Vancouver. He booked tons of cruise ships, and he calls me. And my parents were down at our ranch in Washington. We had a small ranch down there, summer home. And I get the call on a Tuesday. Hi, this is John Whitefoot. He's English. And I said, yes. I said, John. I said, it's Murray. I said, I know it's Murray. I'm calling you. And this is a landline, no cell phones yet. And he says, fax machines were around. And I said, hey, saw your stuff. There's a ship opening going from Montreal to New York City. It's a 2-week cruise, 7 days down, 7 days back. So it goes through Cape Cod, all the way down Bar Harbor, Maine, to New York. And then it goes back 7 days to Montreal. I have a 2-month contract for you. If you'd like it, you got to do 2 45-minute shows and then a 10-minute show for opening when people arrive on the ship. And the pay is $1,100 a week, American. Now, don't forget, I was 19, just turned 20. And I'm in Canada. So remember, $1,100 in Canada, even back then, was around $1,800 Canadian.
Yeah.
I thought, holy smokes, 20 years old, $1,800 a week? That's unbelievable. Like, that's real money. Like, I could retire soon. So, so literally I said, yeah, no problem. I said, great. I said, when's the job? He said, well, you got to be on a plane Friday. I'm like, Friday? I'm like, sure, great. So I hang up the phone. I call my parents who are down in the States, who's about an hour and a half away. Say, hey, Mom and Dad, I got an offer for a cruise ship. I'm going away for 8 weeks. I need 2 45-minute show and a 15, and I'm leaving Friday. Like, oh, my God, really? I said, yeah. I don't know what to do. So I did a big quick cartwheel in the living room. I got very excited, and then I just literally freaked out because I thought, I have no idea how I could ever pull this off. Because I knew I had 45 minutes, somehow. But I don't know how I'm going to get the other 45. Like, I need 2 different shows. And the reason why is because some of these people that take these 2-week cruises stay on the whole 2 weeks. Some just do 7 days.
Yeah, down
some
back.
Stay on and go back to the home port. So I was like, all right. So now don't forget, no internet again. There was a catalog from a very famous magic shop in New York called Tannen's Magic Shop. It's still there, very famous, very old. Chris Angel was there and David Blaine. We all grew up around the shop. And if you're on the East Coast, a big hang. Catalog. So I had the catalog. And it's like a Sears catalog. It comes out every year, and you could pick your tricks. You phoned in, give it the credit card, and they mailed them to you. So I thought, wait a minute. I got a great idea. I'm porting in New York City, so I got enough material to get me from Montreal to New York to entertain these people. If I could buy enough material and get it in the port there, as long as my show isn't that night, I do it in 2 or 3 days, I might be able to pull off another show. So I go through this catalog, spending $1,000 or more on new tricks I've never done in my life, but things that would give me some time, right? And I got it all sent to the port. So I got on the ship, finally made it there, and I mean, I had a Home Depot orange cart with an old steamer trunk that people use now for like coffee tables, like nothing you should ever tour in, with leather handles. And I get to the ship, I do my show, it's fine, and then sure enough, in the port, I grab all my magic tricks, and I go back to my cabin. I don't sleep for like 3 days. I learned every trick, and my show was like on the 3rd day of the cruise back. And thank God I did a whole different show. Complete crap. I mean, I'm sure it was just hell, but I did enough new material that the cruise director liked me, and I ended up signing 5 more times contract.
Wow.
I stayed 7.5 months on the cruise ship. So
it goes back to that, just the power of saying yes. If you would have said, I don't know, I need a month to figure it out, they would have moved on. They would have found someone else, and you would have missed your opportunity. Say yes, and you make it work.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
And you did, which is amazing. Have you ever done? I'm trying to figure out your timeline of your career. Have you ever done Leno or Letterman, or you just?
I missed that era. I mean, I just missed it. I was there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't at that time when everyone else was starting to do like Seinfeld and all that stuff. You know what I mean? But that era, though, in that era, in the 80s, when you were on one of those shows, as you know, you had a career right away. It was a really big deal. And now you can do a talk show now, and it's lovely, but it really doesn't have the impact that Johnny Carson did, or David Letterman. Because, and again, there wasn't that many on TV. So it was very select, and everyone watched it. You know what I mean? It wasn't now, man. If you don't have a certain subscription to HBO or Max or Netflix or whatever, you don't see people,
Carrot Top was my first guest on the show, and he was talking about his experience with the late night talk show world in Leno. and he auditioned for Carson's people. And his people thought he was fantastic. They loved him, but they felt that Johnny wouldn't want a prop type comic on the show, so they didn't book him. He was literally on like the following week or 2 weeks once Carson left and Leno took over.
Interesting.
He came on with Leno, and he's been on, he was on with his entire run.
Of course.
But you go back to that, if you're a comedian in the 70s or 80s,
yeah.
And Drew Carey's my favorite one because he does his act for the first time on Carson, and Carson points at him and calls him over.
Yeah.
And Drew Carey's like, me?
That's
like,
a huge honor.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was such a neat thing to see that.
Yeah, because being called to the couch was a whole different world. Like when you were new, you didn't get called to the couch. You did your act, and that was it. And you should be lucky for that. So if they called you to the couch, that was a very, very big moment.
Yeah. How long did you? Because you did stand up, or you took stand up classes, or because you're a comedian. You're a funny guy, but that's not. I mean, it is natural ability, but you also have to learn cadence and timing, everything. How did you get that dialed in?
You know, when I was doing magic, I'd won all these awards, and I opened in Vegas in 2002, January 26th, the Frontier, and I was just a magician. I did a couple tricks, a couple jokes, but I wasn't a comedian magician. I did magic. I was a magician. And I remember doing cruise ship way back, and there's a comedian named Jerome Kelly, great black comedian, phenomenal. He's still around in L.A., and we were working together on this ship out of Cape Canaveral, and I came off stage one day, we were having drinks after the show. He said, "Hey, Murray," he said, "you got to do more comedy. You're really funny." And I said, "Well, I'm not a comedian. I'm a magician." And then he said to me, "Why don't you just be an entertainer?" And that really resonated with me. And I thought, wait a minute, that's a good point. Like when you're on that stage, whether you're funny or magical or whatever, that's a big, like, just be entertaining. That's the goal. And I thought, man, you know what? So I changed my whole theory. So when I came out to Vegas, had my show here in 2002 at the Frontier, I realized to get on TV as a magician was very rare because there wasn't many shows for magicians. But if I was funny, I could easily be an actor as the guy next door, the crazy cousin, or whatever. And reality TV was coming on, showing its way. And I thought, well, the only TV show I could ever possibly get on right now that was more reality-based, that not talent-based, was Blind Date. So my first reality show, and it is online somewhere, I went on Blind Date, and I took my date to the Magic Castle. And
did you really?
Wild. Oh yeah. So that was my first one, and after I got the exposure off that, I thought, you know what? Here's my new hook. I'm going to try to get on every reality show possible. And this is when reality shows just start, and people like they'll never last past a year. It's a bunch of crap. And look at it now.
You were on Blind Date?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Well, I heard Ryan Seacrest did it, and Ryan was just starting his career.
Yeah.
You know, he was on the radio in the mornings in L.A., and then he finally got the American Idol with Dunkelman. They were both sharing that, and he was still trying to be an actor, trying to make it in L.A., and I thought, wait a minute, he did Blind Date? Well, if he can do Blind Date, and he's starting to make it, I can do it. And yeah, so I did it, and then I did every other reality show after that, but I enjoyed... What I did is when I was doing the show in Vegas, I just didn't know how to be that funny. I could be funny with you off camera, but not on camera. And so I would drive to LA on my days off when I didn't have my show in Vegas and do open mics at the Laugh Factory, and at the Comedy Store, the Improv, the Ice House. And you'd wait in line, put your name on a list, or at the Comedy Store, it'd be a potluck thing where you put your name in a barrel of numbers and hopefully you get a ticket that you can come back the following Monday and do 3 minutes of stand-up in the original room. And so that's how I started. And when I went, I never did magic. I would wear plaid pants, black suspenders that hung off the sides, a loose dress shirt, and my black frame glasses and my hair up. But I just went up there and did jokes. And 9 jokes would bomb. 1 would be funny. And I'd bring it back to Vegas and put it in the show. And I realized that was worth the drive, getting that 1 joke that was golden, you know, and I figured out how to make the other 9 funny, or maybe some of them just weren't funny and I got rid of them, you know, but I really learned how to figure that out. Then I finally mixed them both together. So
but you're getting that repetition on stage. This is like a master class from you on people wanting to break into show business, or I think any career. The saying yes, they're going different ways to master your craft, driving to LA, different layers of comedy. Following guys like Ryan Seacrest, who's like that pioneer in the industry. What did they do? They dropped little clues of success.
Yes.
You know, follow their clues. Going on Blind Date. I do know also too. Did you have a degree in radio and TV broadcasting?
Yeah, I did. I went to the Columbia Academy of Radio and Television. It was a private institution out of Vancouver, BC, because my parents said, hey, you know, I know you want to do the magic thing and all that, but, you know, you really should get a real job or something sustainable. And I thought, well, what can I do that's still kind of in the business, but still gets a degree, you know, because there's no degree in magic. You know, Harry Potter wasn't around. You can get your wand. So I thought, well, that might be cool, you know, and I did some, as a teenager, I did some weddings and that, you know, you do the DJing at weddings and stuff. And I thought, well, kind of fun. So I went and took a year and a half course there and got a degree in radio, television, and journalism, you know, and copywriting. But then I realized I'd have to go up north to some small town of 300 people, making $800 a month, you know, and be on the radio and learn your chops. And I was already making $3,000 or $4,000 a month doing magic, birthday parties and stuff in Vancouver. I thought, well, you know, I think I'm going to keep that there, but I think I'm going to focus more on the magic. But yeah, I did do that and got a minor in business. You know, looks good on the wall.
And then the whole look, because I think this is so fascinating too, about how, I mean, you've got a look. You're walking through the airport. If people don't know you, they see you and they're probably say, that's someone. You've got a persona about you. Did the persona come naturally, or was it more methodical?
It's more methodical, I think, you know, because when I grew up, I looked up to all these huge stars that I thought were great at the time. Meaning Phyllis Diller, Liberace, you know, even Elvis Presley, but you know, Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, you know, all these people that had a certain brand and a look. You know, they all did, like Phyllis Diller, and you know, and her cigarette with her hair and her glasses, and of course the dresses. Well, she never smoked in her life. That was all a fake cigarette. Like Andrew Dice Clay, he doesn't smoke; he just has a cigarette. You know, and so I thought I need something to make me look like I'm somebody before I'm somebody, because I'm not somebody. So I need to figure, you know, why not have the whole package? And I remember seeing Rod Stewart. At the same time, I saw Phyllis Diller. I remember seeing Phyllis Diller on Scooby-Doo, the cartoon show, Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I felt like she was on all the time. Her
Yes.
and the Harlem Globetrotters.
Stars that would have Cass Cassidy and all the other people, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, who's that little girl, you know, woman? And of course, I saw her on TV, and my mom and dad introduced me who she was, because she was the older comedian back then. And then I remember seeing Rod Stewart do an award show when he was in his 40s. And you know, when you're 12 or 11 years old, 40 is ancient. And not so much now. And I saw that and went, wait a minute, when I'm really old, that's still a cool hairstyle. And that's kind of cool. And no magician has that. So for Halloween, I did my hair like this, just as a joke. And I spray painted half orange, half green, and wore all black with an upside down triangle on my back with a buddy of mine back home, because we didn't know what to go as for Halloween. This is around when we were like 17 or 18 or something. And we'd go to these parties and somebody's like, well, what are you? And the joke was guess. And no one really got it, but the back of our upside down triangle was the Guess logo. Guess jeans, Guess. And it was a stupid thing. But it was 17, 18-year-old, and we had no look. And some of the girls I ran into were like, you look really cool with your hair like that. Very Fido Dido, very, you know, whatever. Max Headroom.
Yeah. New wave-ish, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Billy Idolish. And so I was like, all right. And then I thought, well, I wonder. And then that same kind of year, I went camping with a bunch of our friends as teens after we graduated, and I got up one morning out of the back of my truck making coffee, and one of the other girls came out of her tent, and she said, hey man, because my hair was all a mess, because obviously I just woke up, and she said, you know, you look really cute with your hair all messed up like that. I thought, well, if I could look cute at 8 a.m. in the morning, I probably look cute at 8 p.m. in the evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I stuck with it, and it's kind of become my thing now, and it works, you know, and it worked for me, especially when I was younger, not having a name, not doing much TV. If somebody had to brand me, go, well, what kind of magician do you go? Oh, the guy with the messy hair. I'm like, oh my God, I've seen that guy. And so
Yeah.
It's slowly kind of morphed into what it is now.
It's that hook. Can we see the pictures behind you? It's just, I mean, it's an iconic look.
Stuff. You have characters and stuff. And, you know.
It works. It works. You played a lot of rooms here in Las Vegas. Some of these showrooms are still here. Some of them are gone.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite room that you played in Las Vegas?
I think two of my favorite rooms I played in. I mean, it's hard to say because every room has a certain, you know, character that you can't get anywhere else. But I mean, one of my favorite rooms in Vegas I played, and I was opening for Amazing Johnson, was the Flamingo Hotel. That room's one of the original rooms in Vegas with the booth seating and all that stuff. And the only other room in town that really is identical to that is the Plaza Hotel downtown, where me and my wife Danny got married, and I shot my first comedy special there. And I purposely shot my special in that room because I wanted to make sure I got it on videotape or on camera quality for a TV show that I really played a real Vegas showroom. Because nowadays they're real showrooms, but they're just theaters. So it could be Chicago, it could be anywhere. They don't have the booth seating anymore or the tables because they're all about trying to fit as many people in a room as you can, you know. But I love those rooms. But the Flamingo is an amazing room. Laugh Factory at the Tropicana, you know, which is Rodney Dangerfield's old room where I just left. That had that old school vibe because it was old, you know, and everyone was really close to you, you know. But I think probably one of my favorite rooms is either Plaza Hotel downtown Vegas, you know, or the Flamingo at you know, over on the Strip. So.
Wait, so the Laugh Factory started off as Rodney Dangerfield's
that was
place?
Rodney Dangerfield's room. And there's an old photo online. I think I might have screen captured. I can text to you later. There's a picture of Rodney Dangerfield standing in the middle of Las Vegas Strip. And it has something that says on either side of the Strip, he bought 2 billboards that says Rodney's Place. And it said the Tropicana. And that was, and I think it only lasted 6 or 10 months. I don't think it was that successful. But he also had Dangerfields as well, another comedy club in another city. But that was that. Then it became the Comedy Stop, I believe, the Trop Stop,
Okay, yeah.
Comedy Stop.
Yeah.
And then Brad Garrett took it over, and then Bobby, what's his name, had it for a minute, and then Laugh Factory came in because Brad Garrett moved from there over to MGM, you know, and then obviously it's done now.
What I love about you is that your love of old school Vegas and the Rat Pack and the history of this town. I love that era of Las Vegas. And we had at the beginning of the year here at Channel 8 with the fires in LA. We had a big telethon. And I called you up and said, hey, could you come down here and just jump in for a minute? And not only did you come down and you walked in, you jumped on air with us, like just walked in, jumped on air for a minute, and then you sat down and started answering phones. And we were talking off the air about that's how like Vegas used to be back in the 60s and 70s. And this Channel 8 was owned by Howard Hughes. And, you know, the Rat Pack would pop in on a telethon at the local TV station. And you did that, which is really cool. Are those days still here in Las Vegas, or has the entertainment scene changed? Are you guys a close-knit group of entertainers, or is that era dead and gone?
I think it is and it isn't. I think it's changed a lot, you know? Like when I know people and they say, can you pop into my show? I'll jump up on stage from, whether it be, you know, Zoe Bowie who's in town or Frankie Marino who's singing or whatever, people I know really well. I don't mind doing that because I think it's great. I think that's what it's about. That's what I love. That's what the Rat Pack was about. But people don't realize as well, back in the old days, in the 80s, there's only, you know, maybe 18 shows in Vegas, if that, maybe 12. So, and there wouldn't be many headliners coming here at all. There'd be like 3 headliners, Robert Goulet, and then maybe there'd be, you know, Frank Sinatra and a few others. But they weren't. Now we have 76 shows a night minimum in this town, you know, and it's not as easy to get around. You can't just hop in a car and literally just drive down the street and be there in 5 minutes. It's a whole thing to get in. And don't forget, when you could get into a hotel, you could literally pull in the front and walk 30 steps and you're at the theater. Now you park. Say you go to Caesars, you got to park in the parking lot. You walk 2 miles to get to the theater. By the time you get to the show's over, you know. So it's a little different these days, you know. And the only rooms that still has easy access is the old Westgate, you know, the International. You can swing around the back.
Yeah.
And you can drive right up to the backstage door and walk right on stage if you wanted to, which is what Liberace did and Elvis and all those guys back then. But I think certain people still have that a little bit, you know. I know I saw Wayne Newton pop in to do John Katz's St. Baldrick's shave head thing in one of the strip mall things, and I love that he popped in. You know, it's Wayne Newton. He's a pretty big figure in town, and he doesn't need to do that, you know. And Brian Newman, who plays for Lady Gaga, he happened to be in town, so he popped in. You know, so I have seen, you know, the odd person do things like that, or some even country music stars. They'll have somebody in town, like Bert Kreischer's known for doing that, and Ron White. They'll pop in if they're in town. They'll try to do that. So I think in that world, you see it in comedy more with comedians, I think, and then you see it now with musicians nowadays. You know what I mean? But it is fun when you do see it because it's such a rarity now. You know, whereas back in the old days, you were like, who's in town? And Don Rickles would surprise Frank, and Frank Sinatra would surprise Dean, and all that. You know.
I did a radio thing. This was 10, 15 years ago at Red Rock Hotel and Casino, and the Rocks Lounge inside there, and Wayne Newton was showing up to surprise our listeners. It was my job. I was tasked to get Wayne Newton, kind of the same thing. Red Rock was not designed to sneak a performer through the front door into Rock's Lounge. And so you got to get Wayne in, and we immediately duck into a kitchen. But it was still kind of neat seeing it happen of like walking Wayne Newton through the kitchen. And everyone's like, because they don't know he's going to be there, and sneaking in the back and him walking out on stage to see, you know, that happened. But true, you go back to the Westgate, you pull up to the back of it, you walk right onto the stage.
Literally.
Not so much now.
Yeah, well, that's how also, Liberace made his big appearance with the Rolls Royce on stage.
Yeah.
And people are like, how do you get a Rolls Royce on stage? Because that Westgate stage, or the International, original International, that stage, you could probably park 4 semi-truck tractor trailers on that stage. It's so deep. And that's how he got the Rolls Royce on there. You could literally drive it from the parking lot outside on stage and right back out again. That's how big that is. But those stages are rare nowadays in town.
Yeah. Have you done the whole at the Westgate, like
Yeah.
done the Elvis walk where you can walk from his dressing room,
Yeah.
look at his mirror, and then walk out on stage? Have you done that walk before?
Yeah, I have. It's really cool, and it's all still there. Barry Manilow used it to this day, and it's pretty cool when you see those old videos of Elvis walking down that hallway, and it hasn't been changed. I love the fact, because as you know, in this town, our history is limited. We just wreck things and rebuild things, because that's what we're known for. We're known to be on top of things in Vegas. That's why you and I still have a job here, I think. But also, it's very hard to keep some of the history. So it is fun to go down there, and also seeing that there's a bar, as you know, underneath the stage that Elvis had built. So he'd leave the stage and you can go just literally down to this bar, which is down some stairs in the stage. It's literally below the stage, and it's like a little bar that he had made. He could hang out with his guest acts and his friends in between changing costumes or hanging, and then he could walk right up in the middle of the stage and come back. It's all blocked off now, but underneath there you can actually still get to that bar though, so it's pretty cool.
And it's a trip to you go back to the the Elvis days of his residency. What, 2 shows nightly? Was the first one a dinner show too?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. First show was a dinner show. Yeah.
Could you imagine doing that kind of schedule?
I mean, you look, a lot of people, even when remember Kenny Rogers, before he was Kenny Rogers, Elvis would be in the main room at Westgate, the International, and then Kenny Rogers was the lounge act. And
Really?
Oh yeah, right outside the door. And Kenny would pop in and watch Elvis, and Elvis would pop in and see Kenny Rogers before Kenny was Kenny. And they had that camaraderie, and it was one of those things where it was just, and Kenny would do 4 sets a night. Because that's what you did in the lounge,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of comedians, we're complaining go to 2 shows a night sometimes. The comedians would do like a 7 o'clock, a 9, a 12, and a 2 o'clock show. Because you did 4 shows a night. Because back in the day, the town was alive till 2 in the morning.
You're right now. People watching, they want to come see you at the Strat, right?
Yeah, the Stratosphere on the weekends over at LA Comedy Club, and we've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 months, and such a fun property. And it's old school Vegas, which I love. It's owned by PT's Gaming, Golden Gaming, and it's great because you actually see the general manager and the vice president walking around the floor still, like the old Steve Wynn days. You see the VIP hosts walking around, and they're very personal, and they're super nice people. So I miss that. When you're in these big monopoly of hotels, you don't see that often, because it's own. There's a lot of people walking around that you just don't. It's hard. You can't be everywhere. So.
Yeah. Well, Murray, I started this by saying I was looking forward to going long form. Just we got to do this again, because I literally have pages of stuff I want to talk about. I literally got pages of stuff.
Maybe I talk so much. That's my problem.
No, this is fantastic. I'm just saying we need to do a part 2, because I think there's so much of you and your life I want to unpack, and they only gave me an hour for JC Unplugged per episode. So
sure.
I'm going to have you come back on another one and chat some more.
Anything this was, you know that. So
this was a blast. This fascinating stuff. Murray, thank you so much, brother. I love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you. I love you too, buddy. Have a great week. Okay.
You too.